Welcome to the Empowered Team podcast. I am your host, Kari Schneider, and it is the new year, baby. That's right. You have set out to endeavor to step into 2025, and I imagine that there are a number of things that you have in your sights for this year. I don't know what they are, but I'll bet there's a couple of things in there that are pretty challenging, could potentially set you back, could potentially have you feel a little uncomfortable. So today, this is your little power boost. This is your little kick you in the butt. Let's get going. You've got this. Keep going. And to start this off, I'm going to share some uncomfortable things because it's been a couple of years of picking myself up and dusting myself off and getting knocked back down again and getting back up again. So this is all about standing back up, brushing yourself off and taking another step forward. Now, when you take that step forward, you're probably going to trip again. And if you trip, you might even fall down. And falling down, that's the part that's so hard because in our vision of what we want to accomplish, there's no falling down. We're usually not envisioning the falling down. We're usually envisioning I am going and it might be hard once in a while, but I'm overcoming that and I'm awesome and I did the thing. That's usually what our vision looks like when we're going for something that's pretty challenging. However, that's usually not how it works. Usually there's some pretty hard fall downs, and usually they are something that we haven't experienced before, so we don't quite know how to navigate it when we imagine what we're going to go through for what we're trying to get. Now, I'm speaking in generalities. I'm speaking in this vague terminology that may not make any sense to you. So I'm going to make it real by describing some of the things that I've gone through. A couple of years ago, around this time, I was not feeling right. I talked to my friends who were doctors and I said, I don't know if the water I'm drinking has metals in it. Maybe I have had heavy metal poisoning. I had already gone through menopause, so let's just get that elephant out of the room for those of you who are like, oh, you're just experienced these changes. No, it wasn't changes. I had already had 2 years, gone through menopause, been there, done that. 2020 kicked my ass in multiple ways. Now, this was different. Something else was going on. I had navigated a number of health things. And as many of you know, eventually I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. But when I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, I got so sick. It was so bad that I was unwilling to stop all of my work because even though I was told by a specialist, an endocrinologist, to stop all work, what that meant to me was stopping some of my spirit, some of the things that I love, the people I love to connect with, the people I love to serve, the things I love to create, all of a sudden would be stopped. And to me, that felt worse in serving my healing. That would be detracting from my healing instead of contributing to my healing. So I was so sick that I lost 10 pounds in 10 days. I could barely stand up sometimes. I literally went from one coaching call. I remember this so clearly because I knew at the time that other people didn't understand how bad things were. At one point, I got off of this computer in this room and I sat here and I couldn't understand. I was so hungry. I was starving for food. I had so little energy and I couldn't get out this door around the corner into my kitchen. I literally crawled. I crawled on the floor. And then once I got to the kitchen in front of the fridge, I lay on the floor. And I lay on the floor until I had the energy to get up and get some food. And then I lay on the floor or lay down to try and put some food in my mouth. And when I was chewing, my food the chewing was exhausting me. I couldn't sit there and chew. So when we're talking about the normal high performance world that I came from, ripping off, I think my record of chin-ups, strict straight arm chin-ups would be 18, clean and jerking more than my body weight, coaching high performance humans in business, in sport, in all these things. So I always like to practice what I preach and have this positive mindset and yada, yada. And I'm not diminishing any of that because it's such an important thing. However, here I was literally dragging myself across the floor to try and get some food and so exhausted, even though I felt like I lived a lifetime of healthy habits, a lifetime of eating well, a lifetime of researching the science and figuring out all the best practices for myself and for other clients. So there I was lying on the floor, too exhausted to chew food and too exhausted to get up. And even when I went to brush my teeth before bed, I could barely hold myself up to brush my teeth. I'd be leaning on the counter to hold my hand up with the toothbrush. And then at the same time, I'd be so wired, my nervous system was going so fast that I could barely sleep. So I might sleep a few hours at night and then I'd be up in the night eating because I was so hungry all the time. My metabolism was just going through the roof. My thyroid was all messed up. So it was really, really bad. And yet, what was happening, I was going through an affirmation, a mantra every single day. I am transforming. I am healing. I am loving. I release all resistance. And the resistance that I was releasing was what was standing in my way of loving, of transforming, and of healing. So anything that I felt was even a thought that was holding me back from transforming and healing and loving, then that was the resistance I was facing it. And I had to just let it go. Whatever I didn't like, whatever was in my way. So that included not being able to stand up. It included being up all night long. It included not having the energy to think properly. And so I cut down all my work as much as I could. But every single day I tried to do something because in my world, I structured an environment from my past that I typically lifted on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I planned my workouts, my programming out in 8-week or 6-week or 7-week blocks in order to train for something that would be very powerful. I knew this structure so intimately that it was part of me. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I would go up to go and lift, but I couldn't even walk. On Tuesday, Thursday, I'd be doing, typically in the past, I'd be doing some sort of interval run or tempo run or distance run or hill runs, often on Saturdays too, so 2 to 3 times a week. And then on Sundays, I'd go for recovery walks. I might do some yoga. I'd stretch every day, roll every day, do all my prehab exercises, all my movement prep, my dynamic warm-ups. I knew all the things. I'm an expert in this field. I know physiology, biomechanics, exercise therapy, you name it, I know it. And yet here I was not being able to do anything. But the beautiful thing about it was that I was setting myself up with that affirmation at least 10 to 20 times a day, saying it over and over again, so that I was building a foundation of potential belief in the face of obvious difference to that belief. So everything that I was experiencing in reality was that it was the opposite of what I was saying. So I decided to fully accept reality. Okay, this is where I am, and just love on myself, love on that. I wouldn't say anything negative about Graves' disease. I wouldn't say anything negative about my body, even though I was a stick. My legs, the skin was hanging off of my legs. You could see my leg bone. Same thing with my arms. I'd lift up my arm and it would look like a line where I used to have all this muscle mass. And it didn't matter that I may not like that. I chose to love all of it. Just, so this is what we're facing right now. And then when I would go on a Monday to go out and do a lift, and I couldn't even go for a walk down the road, I would try to shuffle. I go, okay, well, maybe I can make it to the end of the driveway or the end of my street. Not a long walk in the country, but I could make it to the end. Then I shuffle my way back. And then I'd rest. And then I go, maybe I could try and do what would be normally a workout that day in a lift. I would go and sometimes just lie in the gym, or other times I would try to do a push-up. I couldn't do any push-ups. And I used to rip off, I don't know, tens and tens of push-ups. And then I drop to my knees and do more. And then I do more for my toes. I do jump push-ups and plyometric push-ups and med ball throws and all the things, lots of strength. And here I was, I couldn't even do push-ups. I couldn't do 3 push-ups to do 3 push-ups, I'd have to go from my knees and I would fall on my face exhausted. I couldn't do anything. I was so sick. So I went from I am transforming, I am healing, I am loving, I release all resistance, and then just believing with that foundation every day, I would just go and try. Maybe I can, maybe I can, maybe I can. And I just keep trying, believing that I could. Every time I went in to try, and even if I couldn't, I went into it believing I could, knowing that that's who I am, knowing that that's who I would be, even though I wasn't in that moment. I want you to really emphasize and hear what I'm saying. I knew I was going to try, even though every piece of evidence I was presented with was telling me that you cannot do this. My body was not lifting up. My muscles were not working. My body could not function. And yet I went in believing that I could, believing that I could, believing that I could, knowing that I was changing in that very moment. I was transforming and I was healing in that very moment. I just didn't have the evidence yet. My body just wasn't showing me yet. And one of the things I love from coaching so many years about this is that every time, especially with women, I always like to coach women to be able to do one chin-up. This is like being in business, getting your first client, being in business. You don't know how, you don't know you can, and then all of a sudden you have this one. But when you're on your way there, when you're going from 0 to 1, it's very hard to measure 0.2, 0.5, 0.8 when you can't quite see those things, because 0 to 1 is just such a big step. So when someone's going for that first chin up, they may be halfway there, but they don't know it because they're not quite seeing it yet. They keep struggling at the halfway, but they might be so much stronger in all these other areas. So I went in and I just kept believing that I could, even though evidence was showing me that I couldn't. And every day I kept going in and doing the thing. So the next day that should have been a run, I would try to shuffle down the driveway, shuffle a little further, until finally, somehow, after several weeks, I was shuffling for 10 minutes and I could shuffle a little further. And then finally I was actually walking. I would be terrified of taking my dog in the beginning because I didn't have the strength to manage an animal and shuffle at the same time. It was bad. It was really bad. I couldn't go to the grocery store without rushing to the bathroom. I could barely think through making decisions and making grocery choices. However, luckily, it was just automatic pilot there going through the motions. But so much of it was so compromised. And I'd have to rest for lengthy periods of time after before I could do anything else. The planning of my day had to be so strategic that everything was, well, if I'm going to choose this, then these things likely aren't going to be able to happen. I started to realize that really fast, whereas in my past world, it was, yep, how much can I take on in a given day? You can probably hear that about my personality, about how I want to go after things. Maybe you are like that too. More is better. And now I live in a world that, I'm very, very discriminating in terms of what I'm going to bring into my world and what I won't now because of the gifts that Graves' disease taught me. However, there's this point where you are at the zone where you are shown all this evidence that says you can't do it, and yet you're believing that you can. And that is the practice that I want you to keep doing right now at the beginning of the year, when at this point in January, a few weeks in, you probably have some evidence that the thing you've set out to do, there's some evidence that's saying to you that you can't. And I don't care. I don't care that you have all this evidence around you that says you can't. Your job right now is still to believe that you can in the face of the evidence that says you can't. That's your job right now. Believe that you can in the face of the evidence that says you can't. Your job is to keep going. Your job is to be figuring out along the way and continuing to take that effort forward. It might be in trying different paths. It might be in persevering. It might be in getting more help. It might be in celebrating the steps that you took. All of those things are valid in continuing to support the belief that you can. And let me tell you that belief isn't enough. It's those actions. But the belief has to be there to continue to take those actions. Every single day for 2 years, every single day for 2 years since my diagnosis, I have taken actions in the face of evidence that says that I couldn't. And because I did that, and because I kept doing slight deviations or navigations or pivots in order to find a way to still go forward, that is how I can now do chin-ups. That is how I can now run. That is how I now have a full night's sleep. That is how I've gained 10 pounds of muscle mass back. That is how I've overcome an autoimmune illness that the specialist said could not be done without medication, that the doctor said could not be done. That is how I've gone in the face of the evidence. I've gone in the face of opposing expert opinions and done it anyway. By continuing to believe that I could, and by continuing to take actions forward, even if I didn't know how, by looking for other people who could support my path, by looking for the evidence that it could happen, by looking for the successes of the small, tiny steps along the way, and continuing to take action with unwavering belief. And if that belief wavered, finding a way, falling back on the original affirmation of, I am transforming, I am healing, I am loving, I release all resistance, anything that's in the face of what I am believing right now, anything that resists that, I am choosing to let go. I release it. Goodbye. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing me what's in my way, and goodbye. And continuing on. So I'm sharing this with you right now because I promise that if you haven't faced some evidence in your face telling you you cannot do this, you're going to. Because anything that's worthwhile and going forward with, there's probably some obstacles, some hurdles, some roadblocks, some plain old brick walls, or people opposing your direction, and you can go forward. And it's going to start with believing that you can. And then it's going to continue on with continuing to take action and trying. And it's going to repeat like that. The action that you try is going to show up. It's going to reveal more evidence that potentially you can. And maybe this tiny little window of light that says, oh, wait, here's a crack, here's an opening, keep going, keep going, keep going. And that process will repeat. The belief that's solid has to be there. Taking action forward, coming up against evidence that you can't, with some glimmer that's in there because you took action, some glimmer of the direction that you're supposed to go. Keep going. Because the plan that you made in December or January 1st or whatever you've set out for 2025 is probably a great plan, but it's a plan. It's an imagination. It's a plan of action going forward. But until you take that action, that's only when you know what needs to happen next. And it might be subtly different or massively different from the plan that you planned out. So you're going to have to fall back on your belief that says, I can do this. I'm taking action. I'm going to do this. This will happen. This is happening. I am this person now, and I have achieved it. That's how it works. It can be ugly. It can be messy. You can be stuck in the messy middle, and you might be stuck in the miserable maybe, but save this podcast, earmark it, because if you're not seeing the brick wall now, or the challenges or the evidence against, then guess what? It's coming next month or next week or in the next 2 months. It will be there, and you're going to need some support called your belief. And this is here for you to rejuvenate, reset, reboot that belief so you can keep going forward. Why? Because The person that made the plan and the goal and the thing that you want to achieve, that person deserves you to rejuvenate this motivation, rejuvenate your belief, remind yourself why you're doing this, remind yourself why you believe and who you really are and who that future version of you really is. So let's go. Let's do this. Keep going. Share this with yourself. Put this in a reminder to yourself in your calendar for a month from now so you can listen to it again. Put it for 2 months from now, 6 months from now, so you can keep going for what you believe you deserve. You can keep going for that worthy goal, that thing that you know you really want, that's a worthy desire. And those obstacles that are coming up, you're not going to be worried about it because you're going to keep trying and you're going to keep rejuvenating your belief and taking action forward. That's how it works. Share this with someone you love who needs a little boost as well. Keep going. You've got this. I believe in you. You are empowered. Let's go.